What is up? Josh here, and today just going to do some more Sketchtember figure drawing. And today I'm also going to try to talk through the process of how I approach gestures and figure drawing. Unfortunately, I do not have the hard drive that I download all of my poses and stuff to. That is plugged into my computer at home. So the image you see up there right now, that is actually like a photo from that hard drive that I'm accessing via remote desktop. So I don't have the normal gesture drawing program that I usually have. That is not available at the moment. So I'll just be hopping onto the hard drive and picking a pose every now and then. Yeah. Oh, now before we get started, I'm gonna go share this stream everywhere. Should have done that before I hopped on probably. Oh, having a little bit of heartburn this morning, and I'm thirsty. But my coffee is in the car and I forgot about it. So after I get this shared, actually I should probably go grab my coffee really super duper quick, like before I start sharing a link to join the stream if I'm not going to be in front of this camera. So that being said, I'll be right back. And I am back. All right. Now, let me start sharing this stream everywhere that it needs to be shared. Maybe. If I can get things working the way they're supposed to. Content. Live control room. Sketchtember 19th or 17th. Share. Copy a link. Let's go to Facebook. Going live. Share, post. And Blue Sky. If you're not on Blue Sky already, it's like Twitter, but better. Post. All right, cool. That is what, wow. All right, Blue Sky supporting video now. Very awesome. Super duper duper awesome. All right. How's everything going? I think I'm connected. I think I'm good. I've got my pose over here. Right. All right, so figure drawing time. Let's break this into stages, I guess. So I don't really think about proportion very much anymore. But the proportions that I've sort of internalized, I'll go over those really quick, because it is important to understand the proportions of the human body pretty accurately. So most people agree with the 8-head formula for figure drawing, but rather than like dividing it into heads, I find it much easier to remember. So half would be the bottom of the pelvis or close to it, and then you cut that in half, and this is the bottom of the knees. So this is thigh and knees. This is calf and feet. That means that the calf ends up being slightly longer than the thigh, and then the knee sits on top of that separation point. So this would be the knee, this would be the thigh. This is mostly calf with the feet landing right here. And then the top half of your body is split into thirds. So this would be right here, head and neck. This is the rib cage. And this is pelvis and waist. So those are the proportions that I'm sort of thinking about in my head while I'm gesture drawing. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that you can use it to break down standing poses anyway in perspective pretty well. So let's say if we get, sorry, I'm trying to get into better drawing habits, so I'm gonna try to do things cleanly, and if the mark is not something that I'm happy with, I will undo that line and then redo the line until I'm happy with it. So let's say I want to do a pose in perspective. Well, the thing is, this actually, let's copy and paste it. This will actually translate in perspective quite well. So if it's in very deep perspective, for instance, so let's say it gets into a deep perspective here. You can imagine that these proportions recede in perspective just the same. Now, you might notice the image that I've got pulled up right now is one of those deep perspective poses. And that's why I wanted to go ahead and show how this frame, these proportions would work in perspective. All right, so I'll just move everything over for now, and we'll make a new layer. And now you'll understand how I'm breaking down each section of the body in perspective to really help with the visualization that I'm going through in my mind while I'm laying out all of the proportions for the human body. So really having this here will help me quite a lot in determining the perspective for what I'm about to draw. So the first thing I look for is the angle of the head and neck, which is usually 1 one shape. And again, I'm really trying to keep things much cleaner. While I'm drawing. Actually, all right, so the head is tilted. And if I'm looking at the rib cage, it's at a similar tilt, which would be slightly larger than the head and neck section just because of the perspective. And then the hip and waist is at an even, so it has a curve to it like this. That looks pretty close. Okay, so from here, I'm thinking about like the angle of the hips. So remember, this is the pelvis and waist, and it looks like this would be the corner of the pelvis, and it's tilted downward like so. So this would be the box that I build, or the angle of the box that I build for the pelvis. And then I look to the collarbones to get the angle of the box that I would build for the rib cage. And the head is in deep perspective at this angle, very narrow. Looking upward, so the box that I'm thinking of for the head, the perspective for the head, would be at this angle, give or take. And it's getting messy, so again, I'm focused on cleanliness today. This is my challenge for the day. I do not want to get sloppy here. So these are the perspective cubes that I'm thinking about while I'm gesture drawing. Now I'm just going to draw sort of a tube shape. You can see a lot of the underside of this pelvis shape here. So that's the perspective box, like the boxes in perspective that I'm thinking about while I'm drawing these shapes. Now these are not the exact shapes that I'm thinking about. At least this is not how I would lay them out while I was doing a quick drawing. I'm trying to sort of explain the thought process. Now, if I were to just quickly draw this, it would be head, and I'd be thinking about just the line of action. We get sort of these smoother gestural marks. And then while I was cleaning it up, I would come back in and sort of lay out the perspective grid that I would then draw on top of again. So this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm drawing. Usually. And you know, the perspective of this whole figure is really, like, if you think of wrapping lines or cross contours, the cross contours are all going to be in this direction. And then you think about the corners and how they line up. And then we get something very similar. Like so. Now honestly, I skip the box stage most of the time anymore. I'm not thinking about all of these very boxy shapes, but understanding these boxy shapes helps you construct the figure better. So this is what I'm thinking. This is the first stage of what I'm drawing with the gesture marks anyway. So I'm thinking of these gestures, and I really like to look for this K shape. So you'll have the stretch and the pinch. So once you get the K shape and you determine your cross contours, you look for landmarks and take it from there. So what's next? What do I actually think about while I'm drawing these body parts? So the rib cage fits inside of this square, or this box, and then the pelvis fits inside of this box, and then they're connected by soft tissue. So I'm thinking about, well, let's start with the head, deep perspective, thinking about the boxy shape of the head. So we've got the brow and eye line going back to the ear. So the corner of the brow line back to the ear, that's the first landmark I look for. And then you can sort of lay in the head from there. So the neck comes up under the jawline, fits into the head. Now the rib cage comes slightly above this box actually, so it comes up into the neck. And now I'm thinking of like the corners of the rib cage. So the rib cage, you find the pit of the neck where your sternocleidomastoid, so that's the sternum cleidomastoid, it connects to the jaw, I think. Oh, I might be getting my muscle groupings and anatomy wrong, I'm not sure. But this muscle that connects from your ear to the pit of your neck, or where your sternum and collarbones come together. Yeah, sternum, collarbone, jaw, mastoid. So yes, that is the right muscle group. So this is like the landmark that I look for the most. Like, where does it all come together and connect? We've got a really deep perspective on the rib cage here, so I'm really wanting to think about like from here to here. And then the rib cage, especially on a woman, is a little bit more narrow. So I'm thinking of this rib cage coming through like so. It opens up a little bit smaller in the back. And this opening is actually right below the halfway mark. So it's something that I sort of adjust on the fly. Usually, trying to make sure that the perspective stays consistent. And in terms of the shape of the rib cage, in the back, it comes down about halfway before turning in. In the front, it comes down about 2/3. before turning in. And then it connects. Oh. Alright, sorry. Getting my... Comes down about 2/3 before turning in. And then it connects at a similar angle in the front and the back. Or top and the bottom, sorry. Okay, I just did that backwards. I just got that backwards. Oh no. Alright, we'll be right back. The phone is ringing at the tattoo studio. Spam collars. God. And no, I was thinking about it while I was walking. I am not getting that wrong. That is correct. Yeah, these are the right proportions, and I am getting so sloppy here. This is breaking me soul. All right. In an effort to clean this up and maintain some cleanliness in my little sketch page here, because I've gotten away from it. So I'm gonna undo that. Just gonna lighten this all up. Clean up some of these edges. And then redraw it clean. All right, much better. Slow, deliberate. There. Now the collarbones are that landmark. Anytime the arm lifts more than 90 degrees from the body, so if it's more than a right angle, the collarbone lifts as well. It's the only way that the arm can go higher. You've got sort of a lock in that joint that will lift the collarbone from its pivot point in the center, and then your shoulder blade, your clavicle, will also lift and rotate and slide all over your rib cage. But from this angle, this is all we see. So from here, that collarbone is coming up a bit on this pose, and the other collarbone is going behind the rib cage. And I just think of a ball joint for the humerus. Yeah, humerus, femur. I always get the humerus and femur mixed up. All right, so that's what I'm thinking about for the rib cage. I look for the landmark of the top of the sternum, where the collarbones meet, and the sternocleidomastoid. I look for the direction of the sternum. So this is in pretty deep perspective, and she has breasts that are covering a lot of the landmarks here. Then I think about the direction of the arms. So now that we've got that figured out, let's look at how the corner of the rib cage here connects to the corner of the hips, and the hips are tilted and in pretty deep perspective. So we get a very narrow edge here. All right, cleanliness. So I'm looking for the ASIS point here. So the ASIS is where the iliac crest of the hips or the pelvis comes forward, and you get two little landmarks on the front of the hips where the abdominals come in. So that's the landmark that I'm looking for the hips. The iliac crest would, from this angle, honestly, this would probably be higher. I'm gonna scoot this up a little. Yeah, and a little forward. So the iliac crest would come forward. You get this point here, this point here. And I'm trying to think all the way through this box. All right, so we can see the bottom of this box here, but I'm thinking of the center line where it comes down, and we get really deep U shape here for the lower abdominals. And about halfway is where the legs connect. And you can sort of think of everything here, the entire anatomical structure of the pelvis and glutes is like essentially a pair of underwear. So you can, especially with this model, you can follow the curve of her underwear and basically get a very good idea of where her pelvis is. And then this is all soft tissue. The leg. All right, I'm getting sloppy again. Let's backtrack. All right, I'm just going to erase lightly and do the same thing I did last time. Alright, so thinking of this as sort of a pair of underwear, get slightly wider towards the back. Like so. Alright. Now, I'm going to erase the rest of this. Let's see. I'm just drawing the entire structure so that I can visualize what's happening. Now, the legs and arms. Let's talk extremities now. Extremities are tricky. Also, it looks like I want this to be in perspective the way it should be. Tilt a little bit, get more of a pinch there, and with the muscles it will cause a lot of overlap. And I can check my measurements too, so if I do this, alright, let's do it uniform. How's that looking? Is it fitting pretty well? Yes it is. Except, looks like might want to do the hips a little bigger and deepen the perspective up top. There. That looks much better. Thinking about that receding perspective line, I really need to push the size differences. I think the angles that I've drawn in are pretty good. I really get the sense that we can see more up into the bottom of the rib cage. Now, if I were to draw out an actual box in perspective, find the halfway point, have it receding a bit more. Yeah, I'm actually pretty close. Okay, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm very close to the actual perspective of what the ribcage should be there. So, all right, I'm really slowing things down here just to explain my thought process. And it's weird. I've never actually tried to slow down while I was doing a drawing to explain why I'm doing the things I am. This is just, this is how I'm thinking of things as I'm going through a gesture drawing. So that's interesting. It's very interesting. All right. Another interesting thing, the arms connect basically, well, not basically, they attach at the top of this proportion, and they are the exact same length usually. That's the standard easy to measure proportion anyway. I do have a coworker, actually, Autumn. Her arms are like, she has a wingspan that is wild. So her upper arm is longer than her rib cage, and it's weird. But when you think about the mobility of the arm, a really fun exercise is to think of a spiral to get the range of motion. Now, where this arm is sticking straight out, it would literally be a pivot point from here to here, and that is the length of the arm, and it's also the length of the forearm. So if you bend your arm, all right, if you bend your arm as tight as it'll go, the wrist actually lines up almost perfectly with the shoulder. So again, if you're thinking about it in perspective, you can literally copy this length and then think about how it's receding. So it would be slightly shorter than the length of the upper arm. And looks like she's dropping a peace sign up there. Deuces. The hand is about half, just about half the length of the forearm, a little over. So again, that's sort of the here to here. Looks like it's proportionately about there right now. Maybe 2/3, depends on the person. I've seen people with very tiny hands, some people with very large hands. But I usually aim for half because the hand is usually somewhat smaller than the head. I have big hands. Like the hand is usually from chin to brow. And mine's a little bigger. Just because I have big hands. But yeah, chin to brow is the sort of standard hand size. But we all have variations. But that's sort of what I'm thinking about while I'm drawing the hands and the arms. Just so it's interesting. You can twist your forearm, and you can extend and flex your forearm. But when your forearm goes side to side, it's actually not. It's not spinning from here. It's spinning from your shoulder. So your shoulder has a lot more mobility than your elbow. Your elbow does not. Hey, what's up, man? Your elbow does not actually have. It's a single pivot point. It's not a ball socket. It's a hinge. How's it going? I'm just describing my thought process and proportions while I'm doing figure drawing stuff and how you can use that in perspective. So yeah, you jumped in like right in the middle of it all. So yeah, this is a good pose to demonstrate a whole lot of different things. If you'd like a recap, let me know, and I'll do it. Oh, you're fine, man. It's actually pretty quick and easy to go over. So while I'm drawing, it looks like I'm doing this. I'm just like a little sloppy with it, thinking of the perspective and cross contours and everything. But the thought process is a little more complex. So it starts with the proportions. The proportions of the human body. If you split it in half and then split the lower half in half, you get the thigh. The kneecap sits on top of this half. Then the calf and foot fit in the bottom half of the bottom half. The top, you get your head and neck in 1/3, your rib cage in 1/3, and your pelvis and waist in the bottom third. So if you can break down a standing pose like this, you can even throw it in perspective to get the exaggerated proportions and foreshortening. Sorry, the little one's running around. But once you have these proportions, if you figure out the angle of the head, the angle of the chest, well, the head and neck, the angle of the chest, and the angle of the pelvis and waist, you can imagine those boxes in perspective, build those boxes around it, and then within those boxes, I'm sort of building the formulaic rib cage with pelvis. This concept for figure drawing is, honestly, it's mostly from an artist named Ten. He has a course on Colosso. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. The course is now down from Colosso, unfortunately. Yeah. So that's where a lot of it comes in. And then a whole lot of Michael Hampton. But what's up, Sean? But yeah, 1010 breaks down the figure into basically a mannequin, so that if you understand, I never really internalized it this way before studying anatomy, but if you understand the mannequin, you can change the mannequin any way you want and pose the mannequin any way you want. Like, I could confidently pose or change the pose that I see and know that it's fairly anatomically correct, just because the more you repeat it and the more you build the mannequin in your head, the more confident you can be about altering it. So once you understand how to use these proportions and put them in perspective, and then build from those proportions in perspective, it gives you a grasp of the human figure that honestly, it seems like magic. Like, even looking at me drawing now, I'm like, wow, I could not have done this before I internalized this mannequin. Because I'm not copying what I see, I'm understanding what I'm drawing. And there's the fundamental difference. Like, if you can truly grasp perspective and truly construct this mannequin in your head, then you can do anything with a human figure. It's wild. So I'm gonna go ahead and get back into constructing the legs. So the legs, again, I'm thinking about these proportions. So if there's a ball joint here, which the hips, I would argue, are another ball joint, sort of like the shoulder, you get a lot more mobility. Like, you can extend a leg out, you can extend a leg down, you can bring the leg backward. Now there's a lock, sort of like the shoulder girdle. So if you lift your arm past 90 degrees, your shoulder girdle starts to move with your arm, and it pivots from the center of your neck, sternum here. So as you lift here, your collarbone would come up. With your pelvis and leg, the further back you go, the more you have to tilt the pelvis. So there's sort of a lock at about this angle, and then from there you would have to tilt the hips back a little further. But I am going to focus on just the leg coming out here. So first I think of just like the bone, the stick of it, and then I would build cylinders around that. And I would do the same thing for the arm up here too. So the arm is really not in any sort of perspective here. I'm not seeing the front, back, bottom, or side. I'm just building a box almost from the side of that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up just so that I can keep everything clean. Now this leg, yes, I like using cylinders, but really things are a little boxier. So I'm thinking of like the bottom edge of a box here. Get rid of the pelvis. And if I were drawing this, I would soften the edge of that box. Like I really want to have a rounded box. Like so. So it's like a cylinder and a box, and it sits really in front of the pelvis. This is a pretty flat perspective here too. All right, so the glutes, a third of, now we get to talk about the hips. So if the hips were a box, which they are, sort of, let's say spine, I'm just thinking about the hips as a box right now. She's not naked. She's in underwear so that you can see her anatomy. No, there's no nudity allowed on the YouTubes. So the hips sit about like so. So the glutes on this box of the hips connect about halfway down the hips, or well, the pelvis, halfway down the pelvis. And then connect again to the legs. So that's the connective tissue. For the oh, sorry. That sounds like a you problem. I'm sorry. If you're gonna study art, you're gonna have to get not scared of the human figure anyway. All right, so that was my breakdown of the hips. Sorry for having to mute there for a second. My daughter was running around with a very loud toy in the tattoo shop. All right, so hips, glutes connect to the leg. So that's what I'm thinking about here. We get this soft connective tissue connecting to the that's not really a cut. It's a decision to be bald rather than balding. But we get the same thing on the other side. You can see that she's got a little bit of her glute coming around there. And then we get to the knees and the calves. So, the knee is really just a triangular, boxy shape that comes off comes off the thigh. And then you can imagine another cylinder. And this one's also pretty squared off. Oh. That boxy. And so just like the elbow, we get the hinge. Awesome. I like your job. Totally lost my train of thought. So you have a ball joint here and a hinge joint here. So your shoulders are a ball joint, your elbows are a hinge joint. Much less range of motion. Same for your hips. So this is a ball joint. It's a much larger ball joint, but you get a lot more mobility here than you do from your knees. Your knees are a hinge joint. And then the easiest way to represent the feet that I have found is really just two triangles. And there's a thickness. And this is just from Quick Sketch. So triangle for the heel, and then triangle for the rest of the foot. And then you can attach toes to it if you want. So outer edge. This would be the inner edge. And that is the, oh, wait, hold on. She's got more on. Yes, sort of. I have, well, thanks for the sub. So Sean's question, do you have any experience with carpal tunnel? Unfortunately, yeah. Oddly, it is not in my right hand. So I'm right-handed. This is my drawing hand and my tattooing hand. And I've broken it. I've broken this hand. So I do have arthritis in my right hand. Pretty bad arthritis, actually. But it's my left hand where I have carpal tunnel. So while I tattoo, I stretch the skin with my left hand. So it's the constant extension that's causing issues. Yeah, I always thought that I would have a lot more issues out of my right hand than my left, just because I abuse my right hand a lot. But my left hand is the one that I'm having issues with right now. And I do see it was a big enough concern that I got put on steroids to reduce the inflammation once. Actually, that's twice now. Not fun. Welcome back. But yes, I do have some issues with carpal tunnel and tendonitis in my left hand, and haven't found anything to help yet. I take regular medications for it. All right, so next, again, upper arm is essentially, what's your question? Upper arm, same length as the rib cage, hinge joint, lower arm. This looks like it's going back, but it's almost a flat, so I'm going to make it the same length. And then pose the hand. Like so. How do you draw the other eye and the other hand? Practice. That sounds like the cop-out answer. Really, it's just eventually you develop a pretty good understanding of spatial relationships, and you'll eventually get there. I mean, that's really the best I've got to offer, unfortunately. No, you're fine. You're fine. I have kids. Nothing can really annoy me that much. That's not a challenge, by the way. And that, my friends, is at least the thought process behind how I approach figure drawing. So now that you can understand the thought process behind it, I am going to pick a new pose and just draw for the next 5 minutes so that you can see how it comes together. We'll pick a different model. Why do they scare you? What's up? You're hopping on during the tail end of the stream. I'm gonna do one more pose, like an actual pose. Let's see. weird one. Help, you just realized. What have you just realized? That works. All right. Let me pull that back up. Here we go. So this one's not in perspective. This one is just a regular pose. But again, thinking of the angles. Yeah, that pretty well covers it. So thinking about this while I'm building this. I can't really talk through it the same way while I'm drawing as I am while I'm trying to teach it anyway. And yes, I did change the pose. I made her more stable and slightly more dynamic. Slightly, I think. Tried to anyway. More stable and dynamic. That's an interesting combination. Oh, not bad for, well, that was about 10 minutes. Oh, alright. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. It was a whole lot of fun, and I didn't do her feet. Oops. Just realized that. Just sort of let it fade off as I got down that low. Sort of constructing this from my head. This foot is actually there we go. Yeah, all right, there we go. And yeah, oh yeah, it's the stuff and things. On that note, not muted, right? No, okay. On that note, I am going to hop off here and see when my client's gonna show. And until next week, take it easy, everybody. Keep drawing, painting, writing, singing, or dancing your hearts out. We'll talk soon. Visit joshj.blog if you want to hop on my newsletter or mailing list and stuff. And yeah, until next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.